Welcome everyone this afternoon, or possibly good morning. Welcome to the ITAM Intelligent Solutions webinar, Optimal Ways of Integrating Barcode Scanners into IT Asset Management. My name, of course, is Lynn Weiss, and I'm from ITAM, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we start, we do have some logistical items for the audience. Of course, all your lines are muted. If you have any questions at all, just hit the little question box in the toolbar and type it in. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but if there are remaining questions, which is normally the case, we will make sure that those are answered via email by either Brett, who is our speaker today, or ITAM, whoever the question is geared towards. There will be a link on the ITAM website, hopefully early next week, which will display the recording of this event. And Brett has guaranteed that we will get access to having the presentation in PDF, either from the Intelligent Solutions side or from the ITAM website. So that will be available to everyone if they want a copy of the presentation itself as well. For all those, of course, that are ITAM certified, this webinar does count as 2 points towards your recertification, and that you can check from the new ITAM website. So there's a lot less work to do there as far as filling out your recertification paperwork. So to get things moving, I'd like to introduce you today to our speaker, William Brett Husselbaugh. He has extensive experience in IT asset management, having architected solutions for well over 50 clients in a variety of sizes from small to large. He was the former CEO of Tobex, an ITAM firm that specialized in IT physical inventories and ITAM implementations, and sold to Intercom in 1988. Since then, he started Intelligent Solutions, ESI, a thought leadership organization in the space of IT software asset management. They specialize in ITAM and software implementations, and excuse me, and is a full spectrum solution provider, ranging from the initial value analysis and design all the way through the implementation and steady state. So to get the rest of the presentation underway, I'm going to turn things over to Brett.
Thanks, Lynn. I was waiting for you to press the record button. Give me time there. Welcome, everyone. As Lynn said, my name is Brett Husselbaugh, and today we're going to talk about barcode scanners and how to integrate those into ITAM. At least what we've seen is best practices in doing that. And before we get into that, though, I'd like to start off by talking about the way we like to categorize data elements that we track. And this becomes germane to this whole scanner question. Usually when we work with clients, one of the first things we'll do with the client is derive a data dictionary. So the exact data elements that are going to be tracked by the ITAM system and the reason those data elements are being tracked. You know, not just because someone wants to track it, but we tie it back to a value proposition. And when we're done, we'll go through that data dictionary and we'll categorize every one of the data elements as one of these 3 categories. So it's either a component, which means, and this usually only applies to intelligent devices. So it's the processor, the speed of the processor, the amount of memory in the device, how much storage it has, its IP address, its device name, that kind of information is component level. And all of the installed software, too. That's all component level information. Or it's static. Static is information that never changes over the life of the asset. So the manufacturer, the product description, the serial number, the purchase order, the vendor it was purchased from, the purchase price, the date it was purchased, all that is static information. And then finally there's dynamic information, and that's usually the information that somehow ties that asset to the business. So the cost center, which is a financial tie of the asset to the business, who has it, which is a custodial tie of the asset to the business, where is it, which is a location, physical location tie in the business, and then there's another one too, which is what status is it in? Is it being used? Is it sitting on a shelf? You know, that ties it to whether or not it's actually being leveraged currently by the business. So those are dynamic elements, and the reason we categorize them that way is because it tells us how we should design process in order to keep that, capture that information and keep it accurate. And there are different strategies for the different classes. So for component, we just auto discovery. That's the best strategy to go get component level information. And sometimes we'll use multiple auto discovery tools in the same engagement, depending on which type of asset we're trying to keep track of. Different discovery tools target different environments usually, or different operating systems. The static information, the strategy there is, since it never changes over the life of the asset, capture it once up front in the beginning of the life cycle of the asset, then protect it. Don't go after it again. We've seen so many clients, build-in process to go after that information after it's already been captured, and then actually subsequently wipe it out. Capture from a trusted source, then protect it. Don't let anything change it. And that's usually what we'll do. That's how we set up our systems. And we usually like to get static information from advanced shipping notices. We'll set those up for our clients with their vendors, and that static information will come in on those advanced shipping notices. That leaves dynamic. Now dynamic, that stuff changes over the life of the asset, could change several times. That's the trickiest stuff to keep up with, and turns out it's the most visible to the business. The business picks up a spreadsheet of asset information, and they quickly can see that this isn't in our cost center. Why is this on this list? And then they, gives rise to not trusting the data or other questions. And so that's usually where accuracy is the biggest challenge, is keeping track of that dynamic, those ties to the business. And that's where we're going to talk about using scanners. That's where we recommend using scanners. The rest of this information, there are better ways to capture it and protect it. And so we're going to focus the rest of the talk on this dynamic data class. So in the years of doing this, we've come to like certain places. We call these catch points, these various places where you might be able to capture information about an asset as it goes through its life cycle. And every business has these catch points in some form or another. And so where we find we like scanners, we like them at the receiving catch point. You'll see there's a trend here. We like scanners wherever equipment exists, well away from any kind of computer that you might be able to capture the information with, and where there's density. And you'll see that in receiving. You've got the stuff coming in. It's all in boxes. It's sitting in a warehouse somewhere or on a receiving dock. It's just very easy to walk up, especially if you've done everything right. We usually like to recommend that you have your vendor's asset tag, the stuff coming in the door, and also put the asset tag on the box. And that way it's sitting in the box. You just zip, 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 zip with the scanner, and you've got everything received in. And usually at receiving, we're trying to change the status of the asset. Now it's in received status, or some status that indicates it's been received. And we're also trying to update its location. Now we know it's in a certain warehouse or a storage room. We want to update that or capture that for the first time. We like using it for mass updating status. Over time, you get assets that are showing that they're still deployed, and they're not. They're sitting in storerooms. Somebody took it off the network and stuck it in a storeroom and didn't bother to update the asset information. And so it's real easy to walk in that storeroom with a scanner and within minutes, scan all those assets in that room and have them reassociated to the proper status. Floor walks we'll talk about. They're mini inventories for restoring lost accuracy and also measuring current accuracy. Very important, but not often baked into an asset management solution for various reasons. Disposal, palletizing that stuff, you're collecting it, it's sitting around the pallets or out in the storage area somewhere, in a cage maybe. It's nice to be able to go through with the scanner and then scan it all and change its status to the decommissioned or whatever your pre-disposal status is. And then we do like it for doing inventories in data centers because of the density of equipment and how difficult it is to try to go through those racks and capture that information. The scanners are better actually than trying to use a roll-around PC or a distant PC for doing that. We tend not to recommend scanners for doing end-user computing inventories. We tend to like to also do a discovery, an auto-discovery of the machine at the same time we're inventorying it. So so therefore, we like to run the inventory screen on the machine itself, and since we're there, we'd rather use the full keyboard and the full screen, and we're usually trying to capture quite a few pieces of information because we're trying to capture static as well as dynamic information about that asset. Since we don't have a record of it, we're trying to create a baseline record of it. Next question comes up is when you're looking at barcodes, well, what format should I use? There are a lot of different formats of barcodes. There are two-dimensional barcodes. There are linear barcodes. And then within each of those categories of barcodes, there's several different formats. that have pluses and minuses. We prefer linear barcodes. We're not trying to encode too much information, so linear codes are simpler, and simple is really the way to try to go. Code 39 is the one that we use most often. That's very common. It encodes the alphabet as well as numerics and a few other special characters like a slash and a dash. And so that's usually the one you'll see most. The downside to that is if you've got long pieces of information, because it encodes such a large character set, it's not as compact as some other formats. So it can end up being pretty long barcodes depending on how much information you're trying to encode. When we have space as a consideration, let's say we're trying to put tags on individual blades and get the asset number on there, and we just don't have a lot of space to work with, we can do 2 of 5 interleave, which is only encodes numbers. And because of the smaller character set, you can make a much more compact barcode with 2 of 5 interleave. Any scanner on the market that we're aware of today can read both of these formats and a bunch of others too. So usually there's not an issue with the format you choose to encode with the scanners being able to read them. This comes up sometime. You're talking to somebody about buying a scanner, and they're going to recommend you get a 2D charge coupled device, which is basically a camera, same technology as a digital camera, as the actual reader device of the scanner itself. And they're going to tell you that, well, you want to be able to scan all kinds of barcodes, two-dimensional as well as linear, and a 2D scanner can do that. It can scan both two-dimensional barcodes as well as linear barcodes. It can do that right up until you walk into the data center. And you try to scan one of those teeny-weeny little barcodes on the back of a server, and it's the camera device does not get enough resolution to allow recognition, so it doesn't scan. And so we recommend using laser scanners. Linear barcodes and laser scanners, they're a heck of a lot more. First of all, you can shoot them from further distance away, and they're a heck of a lot more reliable in terms of reading small barcodes. So that's usually what we recommend. You got some clients that will use what we call wedge, or the industry calls it a wedge scanner, at least it used to. And a wedge scanner wedges itself between logically wedges itself between the keyboard and the screen of a PC. So you plug the thing into your USB port, and whenever you scan something, it's as if you typed it on the keyboard. And so if you have a dedicated PC that you're processing asset information with, and you got some of that information that's barcoded, wedge scanners make sense, and they're inexpensive. And so you can use the wedge scanner at that data entry station to increase the accuracy and efficiency of capturing some of the information that you capture there. So we have seen those used. Usually what we're doing with our clients is we're setting them up for mobility, so that they can actually go out into a storage room, out into the receiving area, and take the collection capability to where the action is, where the stuff is. And for that, we're talking handheld devices, and we'll usually recommend symbol scanners for our clients. All right, so some of the design considerations that we find are important. The first thing you got to think of, and this takes a lot more thought than maybe like everything else with asset management. There's a lot more to it when you actually start peeling back the layers of the onion. And we actually, when we design the scanning and the way the scanner works, we also design it to match logistically how we're going to go about going out to actually do these scans. Are we sending the people out to a whole building? We send them out to a floor at a time. All that kind of comes into play. And what kind of data elements are we capturing, and how are we going to capture them when we actually sit down and design the whole scanning methodology for our clients? But some of the things that are just general design considerations. The first thing is, so we use a handheld device. It runs Windows Mobile, so it is a little computer, really. It has screens and such, and it is standalone. But it would be not leveraging the scanner's strengths to treat it like it was a little computer, meaning you don't want to take an application or a screen that was designed for a full screen PC and just port it right over to a scanner. The operator will be scrolling right and left to try to see the whole screen, and it's very inefficient. You want to design to the scanner's strengths, and its strengths aren't keyboard, and its strengths aren't mouse. Its strengths are the ability to be able to point and shoot a barcode scanner and to accurately and efficiently bring in information doing that. So the more you try to treat it like a PC, the less you leverage its capabilities, and actually you introduce errors and omissions by having someone interact with a device that really isn't as strong as a PC is, at least at that type of interaction. Our design goal usually is to try to get as much as possible the person using the scanner never to have to touch the keyboard on the scanner or the mouse or the stylus on the scanner. So the stylus stays parked and they use it with one hand. The reason is they're moving around. They don't have a desk where they're working on this thing. They're carrying everything they've got. They've got a clipboard in one hand and the scanner in the other, and every time you make them pull that stylus out of its holster, you've got to set down the clipboard to do it. It just really kills the efficiency of the whole operation. So you really want to put a lot of thought into how you design the scanner. So the top design goal is, as much as possible, you can't always achieve this, but as much as possible, just point and shoot that scanner. Some of this goes to a previous webinar we did at data collection, and you'll see the same philosophy carry forward here from stuff we've learned over the years. And one of those things that's common is just put on the screen what's required to be captured at that point in time. Don't ask somebody for something they don't know, because you're going to get garbage back if you do that. So really understand what's present at that particular, if you're in receiving, what's present at receiving? Is the purchase order there? Well, it might not be, so don't go asking for the purchase order number. That's a static piece of information that should have been captured through, in our case, the ASN anyway. So don't go after information that's not known. You'll get garbage back. And then don't put superfluous fields on the screen that have nothing to do with, with the particular task at hand. So you'd be a lot of thought again into exactly what task you're trying to do and what specific data elements you need to capture. There's limited real estate on those screens, and the last thing you want to do is design a screen that have to scroll up, left and right and up and down, just to make use of it. You want to try to get everything on that one screen, so that, and you certainly don't want levels of screens where you're going back and forth between various levels. All you do is introduce the opportunity for errors and omissions doing that. Again, another one of our philosophies is you don't want to be doing lookups. There's a school of thought, I guess, that, hey, we'll just scan the barcode and have the barcode or the scanner go back to the database and pull up the record, and then the tech can just visually eyeball whether the information we have on file is still the same or whether it needs to be changed. And I can tell you from years of having done inventories, your eyes get tired going back and forth between a small screen and the actual physical device. And it isn't long before you just start saying, yeah, it's all the same. So we've learned over the years, don't ask for verification. Just have the device and have the person using the device focus on one thing, and that is to collect information. And then you can compare it once it gets back to the database, either electronically or through reporting. But you'll get much more accuracy and much more efficiency if you don't ask for verification. We recommend using procedure codes. We put them in all of what we call our reference tags, and we'll talk about reference tags. It's so you got a device. It's very capable of scanning a barcode and entering that information into and capturing that for you. But if you've got 6 fields on the screen and you're going to scan 6 barcodes, the last thing you want to do is force the operator to make sure that the cursor's sitting in the right field before you press the scan button. Otherwise, you get the wrong information in the wrong fields, and you get even worse information. Even though it's accurate, it's in the wrong field. So, scanned accurately, it's in the wrong field. And so you can really mess up your database if you're not careful about how you design the scanner. So procedure codes fix that. Basically, we put a code in front of the encoded data. It's not part of the data, but it tells the scanner, and the scanner knows to look for that code. It tells the scanner that what field the data goes into. So the scanner sees the procedure and knows what field to put it into, so there's no mistake. You can scan in any order with the procedure codes, and there's no risk of getting the wrong information in the wrong field. Anybody who's ever worked with HP knows that HP does that. They put, at least they used to. I think they're stopping the practice maybe because of pushback they've gotten. They used to put S's in front of the serial number. So if you actually scanned it with a scanner, you'd get an S and then the serial number. And you had to know to strip that S out of there, that it wasn't really part of the serial number. Otherwise, you'd add garbage to your system doing that. We recommend using carry forward fields, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Again, this is part of our normal philosophy. You want to capture asset information as close in time and space as possible to the actual change event. every second you move away from it in time and every foot you move away from it in distance increases the probability of omissions and errors. And so that's, again, why you want to use devices that you can take right to the, when you can't take the asset to the recording system, then take the recording system to the asset. And that's why we recommend the scanners. Also, automated save triggers. We'll make use of those. That way, we don't have to pull the stylus out and push a button to say, yes, I'm done, save this record. We have a certain field that will trigger an automatic save on our scanners when we use them. And again, this is part of the lookup thing. These scanners are slow. If you try to download a 680 megabyte database to a scanner, you're going to have it in a sync cradle for most of the day doing that. So you really don't want to design the thing to be cumbersome to use because people won't use it. So if you're not doing lookups, then the really only thing you need to download to the scanner are maybe some validation rules and or some status values that you can choose from in a drop-down. Those things you might download to a scanner, but not the whole database. Barcoding the devices. I've seen all kinds of things tried here. We certainly recommend putting a barcode tag on the device. Our favorite, the one we recommend, is purely numeric, fixed length with a mod 137 checksum at the end. So if you look at the example up there, that's an actual tag of ours. We're using fixed length 8-digit tags there. The second to the rightmost digit is the end of the barcode tag itself. The rightmost digit is the checksum that's calculated based on all the rest of the digits. And you might think, well, why do I need a checksum if I'm going to read this with a barcode scanner? And you don't. But you do need a checksum when you're going to have somebody talk to, relay that number over the phone to the service desk, and then they're going to type it into something, or you got a technician who's going to type it into something. The thing is, you're not always going to be reading that with a barcode scanner, and we find that the most common error that humans make is transposing digits. When when you have a fixed length numeric only, then the most common error is transposing digits, and so that checksum will catch that most of the time. Not all the time, but it will catch it most of the time. And so it increases accuracy significantly by having that mod 137 checksum tag in there, or checksum digit in there. And then you get into, well, where should we put the barcode? Well, the advice is put it where it's visible while the asset's in service. So if it's going to go in a rack, don't stick it on top of the asset, because as soon as you put something on the rack space above it, you can't see it. So you want it on the front or the back. Recommend the front, actually, if it's in a rack. The back can oftentimes turn into a rat's nest of cables, and the cables obscure the barcodes. So the front is a better choice for barcoding. And you don't want to alternate between front and back, because then you got the operator having to go around the entire row of racks back and forth, just to inventory one rack. And so same with end user devices. We've had customers say, well, that barcode is ugly. We want it underneath the asset on their laptops. We don't want it out where you can see it. When you stick it underneath, then you can't get to it. The last thing you want to do is ask the user to stop what they're doing and turn the thing upside down so you can scan it. It just kills the entire efficiency. So you definitely want them where they're visible, plainly visible, when they're in use, in production. Sometimes in the data center, we've had to use the luggage. We call it the luggage tag approach. We actually have a luggage tag hanging off of one of the sides of the racks, or it's a retractable. Some of the server manufacturers actually put a retractable luggage tag where you can pull it out, scan it, and then push it back in, because there's just not enough front space on the device to stick an asset tag, and certainly you don't want to stick an asset tag over any airflow vents and do anything to obstruct airflow. So you want to make sure that sometimes you're forced to use what we call luggage tags. You also get into the debate of, well, should we print the tags or should we have them printed? Our recommendation there is have them printed. All you want is a number. That's all you want. Don't try to be clever and stick other information inside of that asset number. And if all you want is a number, just sequentially have them made, because when you have them professionally made, you can get them laminated, and that's important for the longevity of the tag. And don't put anything else on the number. We've seen people try to embed sometimes static information about the asset. Okay, that's not going to change, but why bother to stick it in the asset number? It just increases the size of the barcode tag, and then it changes the format of the asset tag number. Because remember, if you got people picking things up and you got a fixed format, you can put strong validation in. Is it always 8 digits? Well, it's always 8 digits. I can check for that. If it's sometimes 6 and sometimes 7, sometimes 8, sometimes 9, you really can't put validation in place for that. You just increase error probability doing that. And then I've seen some people try to put dynamic information as part of the asset tag, the location of the device, well, it's going to move. And as soon as it moves, it breaks your system. And you certainly don't want to peel the device name or number off of it mid-life and stick another tag on it to identify it. Just break traceability at that point of all your records. So you want a simple number, stick it on the asset in a visible place, get everybody understanding that that's how we identify our assets here, and keep it simple. The other thing I've seen too that seldom works is the concept of we'll bring the asset in, we'll have our people assign an asset number to it, then we'll send the asset tag to the asset. Not a good idea. What happens when you bring 10 of them in? Guess what asset tag ends up on the wrong asset? Practically every one of them does. So you definitely want to, the best practice, have the vendor do the asset tag and put the asset tag on the device and the box and ship it in that way, because the asset tag will come in on the ASN as well, and you'll have all that starter information, static information already electronically fed to you. That's the best way to do it that we found, even though you do have to pay your vendor to put those tags on. We have this concept we call reference labeling. So you get the primary asset tag that labels the device itself, identifying the asset, and then you have other information you want to pick up about that, these dynamic fields. Where is it? Who has it? What status is it in currently? We call those reference labels because we barcode that information as well. And where you can, it's nice if you can actually physically put those reference labels in the environment. So all you got to do is not carry anything with you, just the scanner. Scan the reference label, scan the assets, and you've created the association you're trying to create. I mean, an ideal environment would have, the door jams barcoded, people's name tags barcoded, and the racks barcoded. Now, how many times have I ever seen the ideal environment? Never. But we have had clients actually barcode the racks, so they reference label the racks. And when the reference labels, you can't convince facilities to let you put them on the door jams, then we carry them with us. We design the collection so that we'll only visit a couple of locations on a given day, and we'll go ahead in advance and print out the reference labels and carry them on a clipboard, and then we just point the scanner at the clipboard to scan the location where we are and then scan all the assets in that location. We'll do the same with status values. Sometimes, since status values are always the same, we'll actually tape those to the back of the clipboard, and we'll turn the clipboard over and scan the status of the asset from the back of the clipboard. Again, all of our reference labels, we put procedure codes on, and so that's so the scanner knows exactly which piece of information we just scanned. That lets us scan in any order without risk of putting the wrong information in the wrong field. This is another thing that I find is interesting. You build an asset management solution. If you've done this for a while, you realize it's heavily dependent on process. It's supported by automation, but it's still heavily dependent on process. And yet there's no way that's built into the initial solution to restore lost accuracy, and accuracy will erode over time. It just will. I mean, people, despite the best processes, there'll be people that didn't realize there was a process. They're new. No one ever bothered to tell them. There'll be people that figure out a way around the process and won't follow it. There'll be errors in the process. There'll be process holes where no one considered something that someone was doing, therefore there's no process defined for it. All these things add up to accuracy issues, and the accuracy will continue to degrade over time unless you do something about it. And the best thing that we have found to do about it is these floor walks. And if you design everything right, if you have auto-discovery, augmenting, and picking up the component information, if you're bringing in through ASN or however you're capturing that static data to a trusted source that has high accuracy, and then you're protecting it so it's not going to change, then your accuracy issues are only going to stem from one place, and that's your dynamic data elements. And so if you're going after a few dynamic data elements, that's a heck of a lot simpler inventory exercise to repeat and do with the scanners. And if you build that in as kind of an ongoing effort, you can restore accuracy over time. Do all of our clients do this? No. But some of them do. And those that do, actually have a built-in way of keeping their accuracy fairly high. Interestingly enough, the ones that do are usually are outsourcers that have an accuracy requirement, so they have no choice but to do this. But it really is good practice, and there's a lot invested in capturing that data. And when it finally gets to a point where everyone's questioning its accuracy, then of what value is it at that point? So this is really something that's important to consider when you're designing a solution, an asset management solution. So the floor walk is a mini inventory, and if you got everything reference labeled, or you're carrying your reference labels on a clipboard, you just walk into the area, you scan the cost center that you're in. You design your collection in such a way that you're only going to visit a few cost centers or a few locations or one location at a time, so you don't have a lot of change in that information. You set those as what we call carry forward fields, which means once I've set it with the scanner, it'll stay until I change it. Record after record after record. I don't have to keep hitting the location barcode over and over and over again. It just stays constant on the scanner. And when I set my carry forwards, and I just start walking around scanning everything, and I'm in and out of there in no time if I design my collection right. So we design floor walks for two reasons. One, we use it to measure current accuracy. That's an important measure because you can use that, especially once you start diving into, well, what fields were wrong. Then you can start to see where your process issues lie, and then you can start addressing your process issues. So we'll usually set our system up to do an automatic accuracy calculation based on the data coming back from the floor walk. And then once the data is used to check for accuracy, then it is committed, and then we've just basically restored the lost accuracy. So one of the examples that we do, we've got the clipboards with the information. In the data center, we can usually get the racks actually physically labeled, so we don't have to carry rack labels with us. We just hit the racks as we go up to the rack. And we're trying to pick up different information. We want to know the rack position as well as the rack that it's in. That'll tell us where it is in the data center, location, which data center, where it's located, if there are more than one. And then sometimes cost center, but usually the device name we're trying to pick up, so we can keep a correlation of asset tag to device name. That's what we're trying to go after, usually on floor walks in the data center. Which means, good practice is to reference label those devices with the device name that's assigned to them. So all I got to do, all we have to do is hit it with the scanner. We don't have to type it in. Accuracy issues when you try to type that in. For the EUC, we use our end user computing environment. We usually will send out a link to a web-based screen and get the user to participate in filling out their name and their location. They'll choose that from a drop-down, and their cost center, they'll choose that from a drop-down. And then it prints out a barcoded form like this that they leave, and the tech picks up the form and just scans all. It's all reference label information, so it has all procedure codes. They scan all that, and then they scan all the assets in the user's area, and then move on to the next user. That's the most efficient way of doing it. We have some customers that don't want to bother the users, so they make the tech fill out the form. And it slows things down, but okay, that's their choice, so that they don't bother the end users. Either way, once the form's filled out, it's very quick and easy and accurate for the get the collection done. And then I mentioned the use of carry forward attributes. Again, you want to choose those carefully too. You don't want to carry forward stuff that might change, because then the tech gets in the habit of not paying attention to that field, and you get wrong information that way. So when you lay out one of these scan plans, if you will, a lot of thought has to go into exactly what the data elements are that are being tracked, which ones will change, which ones won't change, and I guess after you've done it a couple times, you'll start to get a feel for where the errors come in. But you want to make sure you design it well. Now, as I mentioned, what we do is we set the system up to when we do this for clients or our clients use our system. We set it up to measure accuracy on the incoming data. It does this simply by taking the data that's coming in, comparing it to the data that's already in the repository, and then doing a percentage accuracy both at record level and at data element level. And then also we keep track of the number of samples that were taken, so we can see if we were sampling enough, a statistically valid sample set of the ongoing inventory to know if the accuracy we're looking at is really representative of the whole or not. And then this is, you can see we keep them simple. You don't have a whole lot of real estate. When we do floor walks, we do have one thing that we do. The general rule, don't pull down the whole database, but we do pull down an unabridged list of asset numbers that are known to the system. And we do that so that if we encounter what we call a rogue, So some asset in the environment in production that somehow made its way around all of the catch points that existed upstream of it. It didn't come through receiving. It didn't come through the ASN. Therefore, we have no record of it. We don't know how it got in the environment, but it's in there, so it's going to get inventoried as a rogue. And so the device will have it scan the asset number, and it says, well, I don't know this asset, and it'll switch the screens automatically to a full inventory screen, which we call a rogue detection capability, so that we can capture static information as well as dynamic information on that asset. And so, we watch that too. We watch the rogue activity, because if we see a lot of rogue activity, then we got a process failure somewhere upstream. Somehow someone's buying stuff through uninstrumented channels and bringing it into the environment and getting it into production somehow. So, we need to go address that once we see rogue activity get to a certain level. So we watch that usually. And most of the fields on these screens are barcode readable. Now you can see the screens have drop downs and everything, so if you want to use the stylus, if you want to use the keyboard, you can do, but not the most efficient way to actually use the screens. The most efficient way is to point and shoot at everything. And with that, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Alrighty. We've got a few questions here already. I'm going to address, Brett, the first two kind of together.
Okay.
They come from two different people, but they're asking for your opinion basically on the use of RFID versus barcoding, and which would you consider under the circumstances and why?
Yeah, so this is interesting. Hopefully they may be asked by a RFID vendor. I personally have not had the opportunity to implement an RFID. I've been very interested in the technology for a while. I am an electrical engineer, so I very interested at a fundamental level of exactly how it works. I've heard of a lot of schemes. A buddy of mine works for Barcode, which is a vendor in this space, and they've got some interesting schemes in the data center specifically using RFID and as augmented with infrared to track devices. I think the technology's probably come a long way. I've heard of some challenges in readers in that, okay, you set up a reader at various floors, and for whatever reason, the one, so you're trying to triangulate the device to a floor at least, or get it, get the reader to help you understand where it is. And you find the one reader is reading assets 2 floors above it, and it's reporting them as if they're on that floor. So you have those kinds of challenges that you might have to work through. And then you've got the opposite challenge too, of where it can't get through some of the the infrastructure that you have with and read some of the devices. I've always been interested in the capability of, I'd like to see it proven someday actually, of the ability to read multiple devices in a very close space group simultaneously, especially with passive tag technology, because of what I would expect to be radio frequency interference between the scanning of those various tags. So I've always felt that the technology is better suited for stationary reader picking up assets within its interrogation zone, as opposed to going into a densely packed room of stuff and having the reader sorted out. Although I've been told by the vendors that they can do that. I've anxiously been looking forward to that someday to see that happen. I think though a lot of the times it just boils down to cost. The barcode stuff is definitely an improvement in efficiency over not doing it, and it's a lot cheaper. So if you can afford the RFID and you can get through the challenges, be aware that it's not, the promise of it is wonderful. I mean, yeah, this thing can just figure out everything in the room. I don't even have to go visit it. To the extent it can do that, that's wonderful. But my expectation is it won't be as clean as that. There'll be challenges and misfires and wolf crying that you'll have to deal with. So ultimately, I would imagine it, like I said, it'll come down to the cost and whatever technology someone feels is best suited in their environment.
And Brett, I can add to that. That's something that we address in our training classes all the time in our hardware class. And basically, from what I hear from the people that take the classes, their primary objection is a cost factor, and then the mobility of the asset. That is an issue as well. I mean, would you consider barcoding laptops when they're not even going to be within reach of a reader at any given time? So
Yeah.
those are some of the things that people deal with. And I want to clarify here, both the question, the people that asked the question on the line here said that we are not working for an RFID vendor, and I can verify by their email addresses.
Okay, good.
So that was a good question. Next question, can the information collected be easily tied in with ITSM tool sets like DMC Remedy or other service management solutions?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we integrate with a tool that that's done by Brazos Technology out of Texas, and they have kind of a cool technology that does not require any, as far as we're concerned, we don't have to buy any staging hardware. They're able to write right into our staging table directly from that scanner. So as soon as that scanner gets cradled, that data goes right into our staging tables, and they do it through a secure link. And so, to the extent that they could do the same with Remedy, possibly. I don't know. We haven't used it with these other systems, but theirs I like the most because of the way it integrates with directly without any secondary hardware that we have to buy.
Okay, another question. What sort of frequency do you see by clients for the floor walks you talked about when used on a regular basis to measure and adjust the accuracy of the data itself?
Yeah, we try to recommend, and it's not always possible. It depends on geographically how you're laid out. If you've got offices all over the place, and that would mean you have to buy 1,000 scanners. That's one thing. If you've got most of your density in 20% of your locations, then that's usually what most of our clients are in. And then we figure out what the best complement of scanners would be and go after where the density is. But you try to put yourself on a schedule to visit that once a year, so you're done with the whole thing. You turn over and start again the next year, and that's usually what what we try to do. You always do it, no, but that's the recommendation. So you try to get to it at least once a year. And if you set it up, it's not like a project. It's part of the ITAM function. You're constantly doing these floor walks. It's just part of your function. You're just changing the location this week versus last week where you were last week.
Okay, another question that has some similarities to the last one. In terms of accepting SLA agreements, service level agreement metrics, either whether it's an internal SLA or external hosting scenario, what upper level of accuracy for asset information would you regard as realistic?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we had a client that signed up to 99% static elements. Now, there should be different expectations for the classes. Static elements, if you capture them up front and protect them and you bring them into a trusted source, you should be able to expect high accuracy on those elements. So your serial number, your manufacturer, product description. But I would even be challenged to sign up to high accuracy on manufacturer's name, because you might spell Hewlett-Packard and HP and Compaq several different ways, and every one of them, is it wrong or is it right? I don't know. Just because it's spelled differently, does that make it wrong? You'll get challenged that way. Serial number, that's a number that should be accurate. And the interesting thing is, when you actually consider how would you measure to a 99%. So if you sign up to 99% accuracy, how are you going to measure to make sure you hit it? Because the measurement technology or the measurement techniques that you would use to actually do the measurement have their own inherent inaccuracies. And so, if you've ever done any kind of calibration with instruments, you know that the instrument you're using as the standard has to be at least 2 to 3 times as accurate as the accuracy you're trying to calibrate to. And so this whole concept of signing up to 99% accuracy seems, really kind of problematic to my way of thinking, because then how are you going to measure it with any certainty that you actually hit it or not? So, but in a 95%, 90-95%, I would expect dynamic data elements. That's so process dependent. Realistically, if I were being asked to sign up, I'd try to sign up to something like 85%, somewhere in that range. And that might sound low to folks, but that's based on our experience. That's what you'll end up with. And it really boils down to this. Can you drive the value you're trying to drive out of the asset management program at 85% accuracy level? Usually when we design an asset management solution for a client, we first start with their value analysis and what the value proposition is to the business. What value is this thing going to return? And we derive the entire solution from that value analysis. And in so doing, we have tolerance to inaccuracy in certain data elements. And where that tolerance exists, we don't really have to be, trying to be accurate for accuracy's sake. But there are data elements where we do have accuracy intolerance, and we try to identify that up front. Yeah, I guess there. That's the end of my thought on that one.
Yeah, good. I was going to say we use some of the same figures when we're looking at in our courseware as far as accuracy rate, and so I can back you up on that one.
Okay, good, good.
When finding new or unknown devices during an audit, is it worth trying to capture model or just manufacturer and serial number, and then work with the vendor to obtain the additional information?
Yeah, I would just go after the product description and the manufacturer and the serial number, and then if I need to fill in the model, yeah, I would try to backfill that with vendor information. Our experience with capturing the model information, you get every number, but sometimes you get the part number, sometimes you get, and then it's just more information you're trying to capture, so the accuracy and omission probability goes up, or inaccuracy and probability and omission probability goes up.
Okay. This one's a little long, so hold tight while I read the whole thing. First thing they said was the presentation has been very useful, so that's great news. But they're giving you some specifics here. They're an organization that has about little over 19,000 desktops, over 3 locations and 2 data centers. They have a situation where there is little confidence in their data and their hardware asset management system, especially in the desktop space. So when they're considering a complete re-inventory, but they know that they have to get better at keeping the data accurate when it's completed, the question here is, do you think that they should first measure the accuracy of what they have, maybe just by location, before committing themselves to this significant and potentially expensive inventory effort?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I got a couple thoughts on that one, I guess. I mean, usually when we see an asset management solution that has accuracy issues and is coming under fire due to accuracy issues, there are other things at work there too. I mean, there's a whole confidence or credibility problem. And so we usually like to, if possible, repurpose that whole project, starting again with the value analysis and showing the executives what to expect out of this thing. Because a lot of times executives don't know what to expect, and they expect the wrong things. So we help get that all kind of in line again. And then once that's in line, if you know what you're trying to create, then that kind of tells you, you can then go through a whole rationalization of the information you've been tracking or trying to track, and does it have anything to do with the value you're trying to create? And you can kind of rationalize every data element and get rid of some that may have been problematic in tracking in the first place. So I'll go through all that. And then, yes, there's benefit in actually doing some level of, there are 2 things that we normally do. We'll take a data dump and we'll run an integrity test on it. And that's not accuracy, but it does tell us if there are specific systemic issues with the data. And we can usually derive some insight into process failure or lack of process definition due to that integrity analysis. But then the accuracy analysis will also highlight even more process breakdown or process failure. Because as you turn around and you try to design or redesign process in order to accomplish the value you're trying to create, from the repurposed program, you need to know if you're struggling, where you're struggling, so that you can address that, with either more emphasis on the process in those areas, and/or if you've got compliance issues, then you got to design in better audit of the process to make sure that people are actually following the process and that they're aware of it, and/or what we call MARCOM, marketing communications, just awareness and creating buy-in. So it's a long answer, but it's a long question. So there's several things I would do in that situation.
Great. Well, we've come to the end of the session here today, and I want to thank everybody for participating in today's webinar, especially Brett Husselbaugh, our presenter from Intelligent Solutions. Any remaining questions, as I said before, I can see a few things have come up, but any remaining questions, we'll make sure that he answers via email. The presentation and recording will be available on either the ITAM website or through Intelligent Solutions probably early next week. And for any additional questions or any information you'd like on their processes and the work that they do there, you can contact him directly at advice@intelligentsolutions.com, as it says on this final slide. And again, thank you, everyone. And this concludes today's session. Bye now.